Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Time!
Three on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU. America. They got a football team now.
Pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, here's Jim Coyle.
Heck yeah, baby! Heck yes! Heck yes! Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Sit down. It's okay. I appreciate you. Take care of your waiters and waitresses on this great Friday. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you along and glad to be here with you as, man, oh man, we're in the midst of the weekend 2 of the NCAA tournament. Indiana football practice has opened up and plenty going on. The games yesterday, the Purdue game was outstanding. Purdue wins a physical battle with Texas. That was just a beat 'em up kind of a game, and they were able to get through that with a late tip in by Trey Kaufman-Wren. And then the other games were a little different. Illinois has its way with Houston for the entire game. They're able to stay out in front of them, and they get a huge win as they roll on into the Elite Eight with this another Big Ten team joining Purdue. Arizona rolls John Calipari's Arkansas team with that's his worst tournament loss ever. And this was a good team. This shows you how good Arizona is, people. I'm telling you, that's Calipari's worst tournament loss ever. Now, I understand, and I'm not a fan of his. Doesn't matter. He's had success because he had that run of having, 10 straight years of the number one recruiting class. He had all those one and dones. But for this to be his worst ever with this team, with Darius Acuff, it's a little surprising. But again, Arizona, man, oh man, they're good. And this was from the opening minutes of the game. Arizona just had control of this game, and they never let up. Braden Burris, 21 points. Freshman Koa Pete added 21. How about the freshmen in this thing? You also got Keaton Wagler from Illinois. Those are special players. And then, of course, Illinois has the entire Eastern Bloc from Eastern Europe. Working out for him pretty good so far. I got a couple of brothers on that team as well. So it's something. But yeah, mercy for Calipari to get his worst tournament loss ever. That's amazing. So Arizona rolling on. That means we've got more great games tonight. We'll talk about some of this stuff throughout the day with the guys. But mercy, this now I did not expect that. I didn't expect Illinois to have the way they did with Houston last night. They just, from the opening tip, was in complete control of that game. So glad to get to watch those. And looking forward to talking to Alec Lasley today about that and opening football practice for Indiana. We'll hear from Curt Cignetti, by the way. Zach Osterman will also join us. And Bill Bender, our friend from the Sporting News as well. As we've got a lot more tournament to go this weekend alone, baby. More great games coming up tonight. And we'll talk about that as well. Of course, as let's see, and then last night, finish out that Nebraska gives away I mean, Iowa handled them, and you got to give all the credit to Iowa. But this was the best game, one of the better games of the night, along with the Purdue game. But this was a tight game, and at the end, Nebraska, after a timeout, sends 4 players out onto the floor instead of 5. I don't know if Fred Hoiberg was quoted as saying, "My team is on the floor," or not, but it didn't work out so well. The astute play of Iowa, Figueres went straight down. He was by himself. They launch a long pass. He scores, and they foul him for a 3-point play. They were up 3 at the time, and that pretty much sealed it as Iowa goes on to knock off Nebraska 77-71 to continue their magical run. They're headed to the Elite 8 for the first time, and I can't remember how long. It's a long time. They hadn't been to the Sweet 16 since 1999, and an Elite 8 appearance is further back than that. But congratulations to them. Another Big Ten team on to the Elite 8. That's 3 already. And guess what? More to play tonight. We're not done yet. Of course, with tonight's slate of games, including Michigan and Michigan State. Could the Big Ten get 5 of the Elite 8 teams? Because these are, well, that's the best team in the Big Ten, and Michigan State is right there with those others. They're better than, I think that they're better than Purdue, but I don't know if I'd say they're better than Illinois, but they're as good. Doesn't mean a lot. Michigan State's got to take on a good UConn team who's actually seated a level above them. And Michigan taking on the high-flying, high-scoring Alabama team. But I think Michigan's got just what Alabama needs, a big dose of defense. I think Michigan wins that game. We've got Duke and St. John's kicking it off, though. Woo! Rick Pitino against Duke. You gotta love that. I do. I can't wait. That's the kickoff game tonight at 7:10. That one's on CBS. But also, just shortly after that is the Michigan-Alabama game. I think Gritty mentioned it yesterday. With only 4 freaking games, why do we have to have games that are at the same time? I would think from a rating standpoint, even that you could just stagger those games. Wouldn't you be better served and get better ratings on a single game if there was not another game competing against it? Seriously? Michigan and Alabama here. You're going to tell me how many people are not being siphoned off by Duke St. John's, or Duke St. John's? How many people are being siphoned off for that? Why not just, you run games all damn day on Thursday and Friday last week, but you think that you can't run one extra game just one section earlier in the day? Yeah, I don't believe that. But who cares what I think, right? Doesn't matter. Oh, let's see what. I want to give a great shout out to Dr. Mike King in Bloomington. DDS, if you need a great dentist, head over and see Dr. King. His son, Philip, I'm looking forward to, I'm trying to get in touch with him. Bloomington South grad. He just actually responded out to me. And I'm looking forward to try to get him on next week. He works in maybe the most important industry we have. And I think it's Priority Sports Agency, sports agency. They do all kinds of things, but he is right in the middle of this. Bloomington South grad, by the way. When you're in high school and you're looking for careers, you don't know what you want to do, and computer tech and this and that. That's the latest rage. Boy, get into sports marketing and agency, because that is where it is now. We'll talk to Alec Lasley about that and much more when we come back. Appreciate you, Chris. We'll talk about that when we come back. Nick Marsh's cleats. Oh, we're going to hear about it too. I was holding that for later, but great question. Don't worry, you're going to get to hear it. Hey, we've got more up next. You're with us, and we love you for it. Back with more right after these messages.
Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemoreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage, and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave & Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our all-new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch all your team's wins on a 40-foot screen and 30 HD TVs. And level up with the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game. Private game suites, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's on 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday. Glad to have you along, and more so yet, glad to have Alec Lasley with us from thehoosier.com, part of the On3 network, of course, and they have been busy out as Indiana's spring football practice opened up yesterday. Recruiting is going like crazy. We've got basketball news happening, and it's just a lot going on, Alec.
No, it is. I mean, especially this year, right? There was no real offseason. Typically, with football, you get a little bit of an off season before spring practice kind of comes around. And then obviously you get into pro day, and obviously this year with Indiana, the NFL draft too. So you go from, a Big Ten championship, which is an extra week in the regular season, to, the Heisman Trophy presentation, to obviously the Rose Bowl, Peach Bowl, national championship. So you stretch all the way to the end of January. And it's only been 66 days from game to practice from the last time that Indiana took the field to when they took the field yesterday morning. So not a short offseason, and Curt Cignetti even talked about it, right? He stretched the quote-unquote offseason a week later. Typically, they go a week before spring break to start spring camp. Gave them an extra week, especially because they still returned, a lot of key players and rest those bodies up. And they do still have, some injuries that they're dealing with. So it's a much shorter offseason this year for Indiana, and obviously a much shorter offseason for us as we get kind of right back into the swing of things without missing much of a beat.
Yeah, and not only is practice opening up, which is a whole new busy thing of itself, because you've got new players to introduce to the offense, to the defense, to the team, to everything, and to the culture. And the culture obviously does not include wearing gold cleats. We'll talk more about that later. I don't have that queued up, but I look forward to it. But yeah, it's the first day, and you've got a new quarterback leading things, and Josh Hoover. And so it's a whole turnover. And this is the third season under Curt Cignetti, and the third season in a row. You're going to have not only a different quarterback, a different leader, but new to the huddle, new to the team, new to the roster. And so that sometimes makes it a little more difficult to mesh all of that, communications, respect. Hey, the linemen that have been here for 2-3 years, I've been here, man. I paid my dues, or you know what I'm saying? So there's just a lot of things now that you've got to bring together.
Yeah, no, and I think, right, a point that kind of goes unnoticed too. It helps when you're bringing in new quarterbacks every single year, but they've also now, they're going to have their third different center in 3 years, right? So not only do you lose, the captain theoretically of the offense and your quarterback, you lose the captain of the offensive line in your center, right? And you've had two really good ones from Mike Kadick, obviously, a couple of years ago, Pat Coogan last season. So there's a lot of big shoes to fill there, especially after Pat Coogan's leadership and what he brought over from a veteran perspective with a winning culture background, right? So there's a lot of things that need to be kind of set in stone from a culture and standards perspective. And Curt Cignetti talked a lot about that, just like he always does in the spring, but especially last year, right? Because I think with a lot of the newcomers, right? They don't have the sweat equity in the program of not only winning a Big Ten championship, winning a Rose Bowl, winning a Peach Bowl, but then obviously winning a national championship. And I think, there's a common ground that you want to find between the newcomers and the veterans, right, who have played in college for multiple years, with the group of returners who were on that national championship team and who, really have set the standard, right? Whether it is the Carter Smiths, the Isaiah Jones, Elijah Hardys, Amari Farrells, right? You can go down the list of the guys who still are on this roster who have been there for the first 2 years of the Curt Cignetti era. And it's finding that good mesh of being able to bring that new blood in, which I think is always a nice shot of adrenaline, bring in more competition, with those guys who have been there for a couple of years, who really know what that baseline is of expectations. And you saw it right away, right? I mean, Curt Cignetti talked, really his priority and his goal of spring camp is to really set the standard again. And it's not something where, that you carry it over from last year, because it's a new group, it's a new team. Obviously there's, most of the coaching staff is still there, but you bring in Tino Sunseri, from obviously UCLA, even though he was with this staff before, but still some movement there. Obviously the offense is different from 2 years ago when Sunseri was here. So there's still some newness to a lot of the group. And so it's teetering kind of that fine line of, okay, yeah, we did just win a national championship. We're a heck of a football program now. We should expect to be the best, with not forgetting how you got there. And I think that's where you see a lot of programs fall off, is they forget how much work it takes to get back to the top, especially when you bring in a lot of new guys. And obviously, you said we'll talk about it later, but the Nick Marsh gold cleats, I think that's the standard that you want to set right away, right? I mean, this program it's the program. It's not, no individual is going to be bigger than the program. And also, no outside noise, no distraction is going to be allowed into practice, into the facilities on this team. So I think it's right. A lot of people are taking, I think, a lot of this out of context. I think a lot of people are going a little bit too far with some of the comments that they're making in regards to Curt Cignetti, oh, you should have known that this was the type of player that you were going to get, blah, blah, blah.
No,
it's ridiculous.
Way.
It's ridiculous.
And again, I hate comparing him to Bob Knight. It's not fair, but there are some similarities. I'm not going to lie, but these are more positive similarities. And as a player, I don't care if it's been 2 years of people really knowing who he is. You know who he is. You know what you are going into. And if you thought wearing gold cleats was part of that, it's a great learning experience, I see, for not only him, but all of those that follow after.
No, absolutely. And I think a lot of these guys, right, you hear the stories, right? You hear about who he is. You talk to the players who have been on the roster. You know a little bit about what he is. Obviously, you meet him on your visits, but you don't know, what Curt Cignetti is like until you get into a football season, right? I mean, that's a very different type of personality that is very, very strict with hitting each standard every single day. And, I think it's a lot of people, a lot of players should say, I think they think it's still a little bit more talk than it actually is action, especially in the spring. But we've seen now over the first 2 years, right? Whether it's in the weight room with previously the strength coach Garrett Goings, Curt Cignetti has harped on religiously how important the spring is, and the time between the last game of the season and getting these guys
right now, trying to get you guys in those positions, and then
so that's the biggest thing for a lot of these new players. They just have not been in the in this system and in this strict kind of regimented, detail-oriented program before, and then obviously they got a really early taste of it yesterday.
Absolutely, and they start as the defending national champion. It's a role that I think Curt Cignetti, even though he has not been a part of the hierarchy of neither is Indiana, but Curt Cignetti just lives in that world as if he has been in that world his entire career. He coaches very similarly to that of Nick Saban. Even when he wasn't at Indiana, it didn't matter where he was, he had that same, because I've seen clips of him that were 10 years old. He's saying the same things. This is not new. He has been living this his entire career. We're building it along the way. But this is not something that just came up. This is how he, I don't want to say lives his life, but pretty damn close to it. And it always has. And that makes it a lot easier for him. But he really stays in those lanes.
No, I mean, he absolutely does. Again, this is he knows how to win. He's done it his entire career. He has not changed from the process that's got him there. He's talked about how he evolves, right? But he doesn't change. And all great coaches, they don't change what they do if they continue to win. They always look to evolve and get better in certain ways. But you don't if something's working, you don't change. You just have to continue to adapt to the new kind of landscape of the sport. And that's what he's obviously continued to do. But it still goes back to the X's and O's. It still goes back to his ability to scout. It still goes back to his, very, very strict attention to detail. And then obviously that's what you get from top down with the rest of his staff too. And so if you're whether it's a recruit or a guy that stepping in day one like Nick Marsh, right? You're by no means going to get a pass just because of who you are or what your ranking is or what your star is. If anything, the eyes from the coaching staff are going to be on you even more because of what you do bring to this team.
Then we've got in addition to new players coming in, we've got a returning but new face on the staff in Tino Sunseri as the former co-offensive coordinator, now the quarterback's coach for Indiana. He was asked about blending in or Cignetti blending him in and whatnot, but I don't think I've got this queued up where I need it to be, so I'll do that in the break. But that's another I don't know, intangible or something to throw in. But the good thing about this, he's a former member of the staff, and so there's enough familiarity that this should just be a seamless integration. As seamlessly if we've seen Curt Cignetti integrate 3 different quarterbacks into the starting role that had not been on the Indiana staff or the Indiana team the year before. It's amazing to watch this, but yet Indiana still high on the list of big-time recruits across the board, but quarterback as well. And this yesterday also started a 2.5-month window where Indiana will welcome in close to 60 prospects to hopefully woo in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just quickly on the Tino Sunseri, stuff and kind of fitting him back into this system, right? Obviously, he knows what Curt Cignetti's about. He's been around this coaching staff for years. The one interesting part that Curt Cignetti talked about yesterday when he got a question about Tino Sunseri was kind of how you bring him back in with the tweaks and the changes that were obviously made last year with Chandler Whitmer. I thought it was interesting because we didn't really hear a whole lot about this last year throughout the season with Chandler Whitmer bringing in VR, virtual reality technology to the quarterback's room. So, Cignetti talked kind of, few different points about what he did, Chandler Whitmer, that is bringing in the VR technology to help not only Fernando Mendoza, right, but the whole quarterback's room be able to, piece together different parts of their prep, be able to do a lot of different things with their scout, and then also in practice too. So I think that's another piece that's something that kind of got brushed underneath the radar. There is they're keeping that. So I think that's going to be another tool, right, for Josh Hoover to be able to utilize, but something that Tino Sunseri didn't do before, and this coaching staff did not do before either. So I think that's an interesting little tidbit as well. And it looks like we may have lost Jim on that one, but I mean, look, if you want to continue to talk football,
You didn't lose me, brother.
Where'd you go?
Refurbishing the go-go juice, but no, sorry about that. But yeah, I'm interested in see what I'm interested in now is what happens at backup quarterback, because that's
I don't think it's a question.
What's that?
I don't think it's really a question. Do you?
Who's it going to be?
Grant Wilson.
Okay. What's the situation with Tyler Cherry?
He's back. He's back. If you even saw some of the pictures that were posted, he has a huge leg sleeve on that leg. Look, I mean, he's obviously missed all last year with the leg injury. He's back on the roster this year. He was taken off last year because there really was not a whole lot of clarity about when he would be able to come back. But he's back on the roster. He's going to go obviously through spring camp, through off-season workouts. But right, I mean, look, if we know what Curt Cignetti wants out of his quarterbacks. If you're already a young player, you're probably not going to get a lot of reps. If you're a young player who hasn't played and is coming off of a significant injury, regardless of how talented you are, I think you're still probably a year away. And I think that's where you're at with Tyler Cherry. There's a reason you bring back Grant Wilson, the guy who's obviously played a ton of football. Obviously, right, knock on wood, you're not looking and expecting any type of major injury at the quarterback position, but look at what Indiana's been able to do in the limited snaps that their backup quarterbacks have done. Obviously, Taven Jackson came in and had some really bright moments when Curtis Rourke was out, and then obviously with Fernando, a guy who really was never taken off the field, but when he did, you had Alberto that could come in and again was a Curt Cignetti type kind of mindset person. Obviously kind of an extension of Fernando in ways himself. But I think there's a reason you bring back Grant Wilson, one, to kind of help mold this quarterback room of, multiple different pieces together. You don't have a lot of experience. You also bring in a new quarterback in Josh Hoover, who hasn't been with the system before. You have a guy who's now been with the system for 2 years, who knows kind of what it's like, and also a guy who's played, I think, 5 years of college football in general, right? So I think, again, the expectation is Josh Hoover goes through the season. If you do face anything, I think Grant Wilson's that guy, because he's been now in the system before. It'd be great, right, if you have one of the younger guys that kind of break through, but I just don't see that happening, and see it more being a Grant Wilson thing. If anything, right, you'll see some of these younger guys get in, obviously not burn their red shirt, I'm sure, throughout the season, but the expectation is you're not going to have to use a lot of those young pieces unless you really, really have to.
And there's a great story in the Hoosier.com right now about a 4-star quarterback that is raving about Indiana from Florida. So continue to just get more. These guys are going to want, it's like going, this is going to sound dumb, it's like going to football college, if that makes sense. They're going to learn. This is a class. This is a master's class of quarterback. They're like, okay, this guy knows what the hell he's doing. Obviously, been successful with quarterbacks before he got to Indiana, and so now he's got him winning Heisman's. And every quarterback that comes after him, including starting with Josh Hoover. Josh Hoover will be I predict right now, he's a Heisman finalist, and I think that's probably going to become the norm for Indiana. I'm not going to say they're going to have a Heisman finalist every year, but with this system and with how Curt Cignetti is about how it is run, it's going to be hard to imagine that they don't stay up there. Now, you've got to have the receivers, the line, and running backs, and all that every time, which everybody is trying to do. But right now, it's looking like this is a nice wheel that is turning.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, even go back to, right, it's been widely discussed, so this is nothing out of the blue here by any means, but you go back to 2019, I think it was, with Curt Cignetti quarterbacks, and they've always been, right, conference offensive players of the year, every single quarterback outside of Curtis Rourke, and he was still second team All Big Ten. He was still first in the FBS and total QBR rating, and obviously led Indiana to an 11-2 record. And I think that shows obviously what not only the system does, but you look at all these quarterbacks, they've been vastly different in terms of skill set. And I think out of the 3 quarterbacks now that you're going to have at Indiana in the first 3 years, Rourke, Mendoza, Josh Hoover, I think it's from a just pure talent standpoint, Josh Hoover is by far the most talented of the 3, which is a scary thought. Right. I mean, obviously, he has not had the talent around him at TCU. He's had to do a lot more at TCU. I mean, he's throwing the ball 13, 14 more times a game than Fernando Mendoza was, with less talent and with more pressure on him. The one stat, right, that everyone wants to look at is interceptions. And, he's thrown 24 over the last 2 years. And obviously this team and this system is predicated around limiting turnovers and not beating yourself, right? So that's the big kind of point of discussion. And the one thing that you need to look at is turnover worthy plays, right? Fernando Mendoza had a higher rate his 2 years at Cal in turnover worthy plays from a percent perspective than Josh Hoover did last year at TCU. So that the interceptions is not going to be the end. It's like wins and losses for quarterbacks, right? Everyone likes to look at those stats, but at the end of the day, right, they're not playing defense, they're not playing special teams, they're not doing everything else. They can only do so much. And I think interceptions is just an easy way to say, well, this guy's not as good, or this guy doesn't fit, when in all actuality, he was pretty much, I think, the perfect fit for this team because of, one, how much RPO action they had at TCU, second, behind Fernando Mendoza nationally. So you have a guy who's already used to, a specific system that's doing a lot of play action and a lot of RPO action, right? And I think that's the biggest intangible that is difficult to find, right? We always talk about now college quarterbacks, do they play under center, or are they in shotgun, right? Because the NFL is a lot more under center. It's kind of morphing into more of, a little bit of a shotgun aspect as well. But, a lot of these college quarterbacks don't typically go under center, and you're starting to see a little bit more of a trend that way as well. But a lot of what people just don't understand is how you fit within the system. And this staff has done a phenomenal job, not just at the quarterback spot, right, but around every position, fitting guys that fit, or bringing in guys that fit perfectly in that spot. And that's why they do so well at backfilling these positions, because they're not going out. This is, obviously you look at, they had the number 1 overall transfer portal class this year, right? That obviously shows you that they got a lot more talent. Yes. But they also turned down 4, 5, 6, multiple different players that wanted to come to IU that were very talented, that just did not fit what they were trying to do. Right. They brought in
one more time. They did what?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, they brought in like 3 or 4 additional running backs because they were looking to add more to that group, because you had a couple question marks around what Lee Beebe's health would be. And they are a team that obviously likes to run multiple backs at once. And they said no to all those other guys, obviously after Turbo Richard. So you bring in the guys who fit. Josh Hoover's a guy who fits like a glove in this offense. And I think you're really going to see, again, I don't know, it's early to say Heisman finalist or anything like that, but I do think the way that this system works, it always evolves around the skill set of the quarterback, and it always elevates the quarterback. It's a perfect mutual beneficial relationship that we've seen now for 6-7 straight years under this coaching staff and the quarterbacks that they've developed. And I think no matter who they bring in, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt from a quarterback standpoint, because they've always produced and they've always gotten significantly better, right? Curtis Rourke wasn't really on draft boards. Obviously he goes 7th round, but he still gets drafted. You're going to have the number 1 overall draft pick in Fernando Mendoza, and would not be surprised if Josh Hoover sees his name called relatively early on after this season with what he's going to be able to do in Bloomington after his 1 year.
We've got to take a break. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com is with us today. We've been talking football. We've got basketball to talk about as well, obviously, with the tournament going on. We've talked about that earlier, but we'll talk some IU hoops itself. But before we do that, people, for the last time, Ben McCollum was not an option for Indiana. He was going to Iowa all along. And I got to tell you, and we'll talk about it when we come back, Alec, but how good is Iowa feeling about the move they made? Where they are right now is the first time since when? The 80s? 79 or so? I have to look it up. We've got more coming up. Thanks for being with us. Jim Coyle back with more right after these messages.
The ISC Sports Network is your home for sports content across the Hoosier State. Find us live on TV and streaming, or archived on our website and our app. The ISC is your one-stop shop for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC. Local lives here.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games every Sunday through Thursday, a new menu to dig into, and next-level upgrades like private game suites, the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington, 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday. Glad to have you along, and I'm glad to be here. Jim Coyle with you, and Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com on 3, where you can get a full year of the Hoosier.com, of On 3, on Rivals, and of the Athletic. My goodness, for just around $5 a month right now, they've got their spring special. Get your subscription now. Don't miss out on all of the coverage of what's happening with Indiana football, Indiana basketball, and the upcoming portal opening. It's all there. Plus, the national coverage that Indiana is getting is it's crazy. So you're missing out on a lot of great information. But inside intel, as I believe Alec was at least one of, if not the first, to inside their site, not outside, but to report the impending addition of the latest staff member on Indiana basketball, an assistant from Louisville, Thomas Carr. No relation to Ryan, right?
Correct.
So,
unless they go distantly.
Yeah, there you go. It was amazing. What amazed me is this position has just been sitting open. And I was not aware that there was another available opening, because we're accustomed to having the 3 assistants on the bench. Now, there's usually you had guys that were with different titles, and I think that's what they do. They give them different titles, video coordinator or whatever, but they're different. But what is Thomas Carr's role actually? Is it actually as an assistant coach?
Yeah, so they had they had 4 assistants going into last year. I think it was maybe 3 years ago. Within the last couple of years, they expanded the amount of assistants that you could have on the bench. That doesn't go out to how many assistants you can have out on the road recruiting, right? You can still have, you still can only have the 3 at a set time, but you can have the 5 on the bench from an quote unquote assistant coach perspective. So he's coming in with a lot of big recruiting ties, and that's been the biggest thing. I mean, he spent a large majority of his time before coming with Pat Kelsey from Charleston to Louisville on the East Coast, specifically in the North Carolina area. So whether it was Team Loaded on the AAU circuit, Word of God Christian, spent some time at Hargrave Military Academy as well. I mean, he is pretty entrenched in what legitimate high school basketball, both on the high school level and AAU level, looks like on the East Coast and specifically in the Carolinas. And you kind of go up a little bit in Virginia as well. But, those recruiting ties are going to be extremely significant, moving forward. And that's what he's brought in to do. I mean, he's a guy who has a lot of connections, known more as a recruiter than a true kind of X's and O's coach, I guess you could label it as. But a guy that has a lot of relationships out there, a guy who's worked a long time in the grassroots space. So, you bring in him with those relationships. You bring in Ryan Carr with his relationships with agents. And the biggest thing nowadays, right, is you have to have a groundwork of how you're going to get into, a recruit circle, right? Is it through the agent? Is it through the AAU coach? If you don't have one of those two, you're likely not going to be able to get involved. And it's becoming more and more evident that the agent route is specifically the route that needs to happen. So you check off that box with Ryan Carr. You bring in an additional younger recruiter, right, with Thomas Carr, to be able to kind of open up the East Coast even more than what Kenny Johnson's been able to do. Kenny Johnson is phenomenal in the DMV area. And now you branch that down a little bit more. And that's where you're going to get, I think, a large majority of kind of the bigger name guys now from a true kind of prospect perspective. He's done a really good job with the development of some guards as well. But you're bringing him in as a major recruiter to kind of get ahead there, and we'll see what happens. But they're making all the necessary moves from a kind of front office perspective, which is what you need to do in this day and age. And now, I saw someone, I think a couple posts ago, said, right, they have no excuses anymore. They're expected to have more NIL. They're expected to have potentially more resources at their disposal now with those two additions. So Indiana's in a good spot, all things considered, to go out and make a big splash. We'll see what that looks like. Right at the end of the day, they need to win. Doesn't matter about what kind of team you put together, you need to win. And so we'll see what happens. But as we sit here, still 2 weeks before the portal officially opens, they're sitting in a good spot for what you should expect a team to be at, losing 6 guys after not making the NCAA
and potentially more, probably.
Well, correct. But going into the offseason meetings, you knew you were at least losing 6, and then kind of figuring out your roster from there. But yes,
let's talk about
the full expectation.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the full expectation is they will be losing more than just those 6.
Yeah, so you've got the 6 to replace that you already know, which that's a good chunk. When you're looking for quality, that means, and now we're probably looking at 8, possibly 9, but I would say at least 8 players that they have to replace. Would you think that that's pretty close?
I'd probably take the over.
Wow. Well, that's because Ristic is one of the unknowns. I thought that he might stay. Did he not play because he just wasn't ready? Because the few times I'd seen him he seemed adequate for just a few minutes to give rest, but he didn't get those minutes very often.
Yeah, look, I mean, sure, he probably could have helped out a little bit in terms of spot minutes, but I mean, again, my whole thing is, right, if you're going to rely on freshmen who weren't expected to come in and make an immediate impact.
What's not relying on, it's for their development.
Yeah, but I don't think you don't want to throw a freshman into a spot if they're not fully ready, because that does a lot to confidence, right? So if they're not ready, then you just kind of have to go with what you have. And yeah, I mean, look, I think there were a lot of I think if Trent Sisley played a slightly different position, I think he would have gotten more time. He was kind of in that tweener spot of not big enough to play consistently at the 4 in terms of, body mass and being college ready.
And then other guys getting healthy that kind of competed for his minutes as well.
Yeah. And I think if he, you look at what his main role was right away in the first, 9 or 10 games of the season, it was corner threes and an energy guy. Those are 2 really, really valuable things to have. But once that 3-point shot started to disappear, he shot 19% throughout the final 22, 23 games of the season. Now he's not that's not who he is. He's a much better player. And he even told us after the season in the locker room after that loss to Northwestern, all right, the big thing that he's going to continue to work on is his ability to put the ball on the floor and slash and get to the rim. I think that's where he did that a lot at different points in the season, his senior year. especially, seeing what he was able to do at such a high level. Got his body a lot more physically ready. Still, I always thought he was going to be a year away from having actually a major impact. I thought he would stay in the rotation for the majority of the season, though, just because of what he did bring, which was extremely competitive attitude, really big energy guy, and just knows how to play the game, right? I mean, those are three invaluable things that you need to have just as intangibles. But if you don't have a true skill set then on a team that, let's be honest, did not have a lot of true skill sets, it's difficult then to just play over, a senior or a junior who, may just be a little bit more physically developed from that standpoint. But I think, look, again, everything continues to point to Trent Sicily returning next year. I think he's going to be a very, very valuable piece moving forward with this team in a really critical part of what this roster looks like next year, because he does have versatility that you can really, really use at the Big Ten level. Just needs to kind of figure out, what exactly that skill set is going to be. Is he going to be more of that put the ball on the floor kind of player and then be able to get to the rim? He still needs to be able to knock down the jumper consistently. Doesn't need to be a high 30%, 3-point shooter, but needs to be, kind of in the mid 30s range. He's not going to be a super high volume shooter from that standpoint. But I've been very high on Trent Sicily. I thought the move out to Montverde Academy was terrific for his development and really, really paid off. And I think you saw that in the way that if he stayed at Heritage Hills, nothing against Heritage Hills, but he just wasn't going to go up against the level of competition day in and day out in practice.
I agree with that.
There's a ton of great players in the state, but practice and development happens there. And I don't think he would have been physically ready, still probably a year away. Now I think you go into the sophomore year with Trent Sicily ready to actually, make a significant impact in whatever way, right, that may be.
Well, I know he's out busy working, develop every day in the gym, getting shots up, and I think that is where he is going to find his niche. Go ahead.
And one thing about him that you don't see, well, I shouldn't say that you don't see with a lot of younger kids nowadays, but he accepts competition. He is he
knows he has to have it.
Yeah, he is an extremely, extremely competitive guy, and he doesn't mind. Right, if there's 3, 4, 5 other players at his position, he's going to go out.
He got that from his dad.
Yeah, he's going to go out and prove that he needs to be out on the floor instead of saying, "Hey, why am I not?" He's going to go figure out a way to get out on the floor. So I think that's one thing, one intangible that you can't really measure.
And those the players that you want to have, a coach wants to have. All right, brother, what's up next for you at thehoosier.com?
Yeah, so we have a ton of stuff. Recruit reactions from day one of spring camp. They had about 30 some players there yesterday. Expected to have a huge crop again this weekend, moving into next week, detailing some of that stuff, and then obviously continuing to put out different kind of chatter intel that we're getting about the rest of this basketball roster, what that looks like heading into April 7th. When the portal, officially opens, even though, let's be honest, it's been open since last year.
Yeah, I laugh about that. So, but we'll get set up on that, my man. And I know that there's a 50% off spring sale going on through the portal season right now. So you're missing out on the inside intel that's going on. There's lots of stuff on football because these national guys are contacted into these agents, so they know a lot on both sides. And then, of course, with the great local coverage as well. You better subscribe now before it goes up. It's only about, what's that?
And I was just going to say, in Pro Day next Wednesday, which is going to be crazy I think they're expecting probably almost every single NFL team there, which is crazy to think. But
NFL
obviously,
team. Hell with that. There'll be more. Every media outlet will be there, I would imagine as well. But Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. We've got more coming up. Stay tuned. Back with it all right after these messages.
The ISC Sports Network is your home for sports content across the Hoosier State. Find us live on TV and streaming or archived on our website and our app. The ISC is your one-stop shop for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC. Local lives here.
If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games every Sunday through Thursday, a new menu to dig into, and next-level upgrades like private game suites, the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington, 731 South College Mall Road.
I can't tell you the truth, but I bought a new, hold up here now, Audi SQ8 the first summer I was employed here, from down the road there, and that thing's got a lot of horsepower in it. And one night, within the first couple of weeks that we owned it, my wife and I were returning from Ohio to see our son, and there was nobody on the highway. This would have been summer of 24.
Statute of limitations probably done.
I would not be setting a good example for young people that need to. So, but I idled it down pretty quick. But it's got a little juice in it. But I'm gonna put the pedal to the metal when they tell me to in Indy.
Could you all cannot hear that from Cignetti? I'm not didn't look at the comments there, so my microphone was muted. But did you all able to hear Cignetti? That's what my question is. So anyway, I guess I've got to reset that up maybe. But that was. Okay, you heard Curt Cignetti. You didn't hear me. Sorry about that. But that was Curt Cignetti being asked what the fastest he's ever driven. And why that question came up, I don't know, but it was kind of funny. He said, I can't be honest. Obviously, I wouldn't be setting a good example for those that are supposed to be following the way. But I find that funny. I don't think that I see Curt Cignetti out punching it a lot. So there is that. Hey, before I forget, Athletes in Action have events coming up surrounding the men's Final Four in Indianapolis. Next weekend, man, it's here. But their Keys to Life breakfast is set for Saturday, April 4th at 8 a.m. Fans are invited to attend as
Indiana basketball legend Steve Alford will be honored. It's happening at the Indiana Convention Center on 100 South Capitol Avenue. It just go to keystolife.us to reserve your seat or table before they're gone. The MC is former NBA analyst, ESPN Chris Broussard, ton of coaches and more there. So, and if you can't make that breakfast or want the complete Final Four experience, mingle with college coaches and more, meet them like Steve Alford, there is a free event Wednesday, April 1st. No fooling. An Easter basket stuffing thing, 2 to 2:30 in Whitestown at the Coca-Cola Consolidated building, 3690 South 500 East. I love those addresses. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joining me now. When the South 500 East. Boy, that's a geographically difficult place to find, I would imagine. But it looks like you're wearing your Braves jersey. I can't see it, but I see the powder blue as baseball season has started. And, well, I don't know how many people I've talked to this week, Zach, that, I'm a Braves fan. And I'm like, of course you are. Braves are set to win their division again, as they do every year for the last 200 years, it seems. But another good season for the Braves coming, it looks like.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, all the pitching's hurt, so I'm actually looking at the FanGraphs projections right now. They've got them third, but they've got the Mets at 91.5, the Phillies at 89, and the Braves at 88.5. So they see it as a pretty tightly contested thing.
Why is it every year in, year out, and I assume it's just because they are all the smaller markets, but both the American and National League Central divisions are just it's like they're just there now, and they're all filled with programs that were all historically dominant in the game.
Yeah, I mean it's a mix. I mean, there's sorry, my dog is eating something. Mo, stop.
Oh, what's the dog's name? We didn't have this one.
Mo. Mo's over here. If you'd like to see him, I can bring him on camera.
If they're the fans love it, man.
Come here,
dog show. It's a dog loving show. Our Maxine. There
we go.
Look at that, man. On demand, baby. That's all right. Look at you. What a good one, man.
Our other one's sitting over there.
Dustin DePirick and Maxine. Maxine is a very, very well-known guest on the show.
Maxine is loud.
Maxine definitely makes her opinions known.
Yeah. No, I mean it feels like a combination with those, right? Like you've got some, I think it would be fair to say, incompetence in places like the American League side of Chicago. You've got some franchises that, in fairness, I think are consistently relatively competitive, like the Twins and the Guardians. You obviously got some that'll spin. The Cubs will spin. The Cardinals seem to be in kind of full teardown mode right now, but obviously, the legacy is strong there. I think you've just got a couple, the Pirates being the obvious one, that there's just no appetite, to invest in a competitive team, frankly, and that's disappointing. It's frustrating. Again, I'm looking at the FanGraphs projections. They actually think the Pirates might finish a little bit over 500 this year, which would be fantastic for that fan base. Anybody who's ever been to it, it may be the best park in the league.
Is it
PNC Park? Well, it's gorgeous. It sits just south
of the location.
Yeah, it just sits just south of where the rivers come together, and you see the entire skyline of Pittsburgh.
But nothing will ever be better named than Three Rivers Stadium.
Yeah, that's true.
God, I love that name.
But no, it just, you're right that there are not necessarily the free spenders, other than at times the Cubs have been, but there are not necessarily in general the free spenders that you see, in the East with the Mets and the Phillies and at times the Braves and certainly, the American League East, and then out in the West with the Dodgers and the Giants and so forth.
Yeah, and the Reds. My Reds, my kingdom for another division title that'll never come. I guess never say never, but oh well. Man, there's so much going on right now, Zach. Obviously, the NCAA tournament, deep into the throes of it, as we are. Will be on day 2 of the Sweet 16 tonight. Indiana football opened up practice yesterday with a plethora of visitors that will continue into mid-June, and the basketball portal opens up in about a week, a little over a week. So it's going to be Katie bar the door for the next month yet, and of craziness. And I don't know what's going to be crazier, but I think that more eyes are going to be on the portal for Indiana basketball and what Darren DeVries and his completely full staff now are able to do, because it's going to be critical. They know they have to win next year. Scott Dolson knows they have to win next year. The fans know they have to win next year. And we know they have to win next year.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, it's kind of a calm before the storm situation. You're starting to see, I think, guys really kind of, get into the portal en masse now. Some bigger names making that call. Obviously, not necessarily like in it right now, but the portal window, it needed to move a little bit. And I'm not acting like we've got it all kind of perfect, but it's certainly, I think, in a better place than what it was, where you felt like there was just so much chaos at the same time the tournament was going on. And so now we've at least kind of, somebody said, well, I still see people saying they're going to enter the portal. And I say, yeah, but it just doesn't feel like quite the sort of chaotic, waves crashing against one another between trying to do justice to this postseason. While also obviously, having just wave after wave after wave of player entering the portal. I think it seemed, at least at first blush, like shifting it back a little bit here. It's had broadly speaking, the intended effect, or the desired effect. And so you're right. I mean, the flip side of that is it's going to feel a lot more like a sprint once it opens, once it starts going, because you used to kind of almost like pick what lane you wanted to drive in the portal. Like if you were one of the teams that didn't make the tournament, you were probably going to jump right in, and you were going to, when you had these waves, because you'd have waves of guys that would enter out of their conference tournaments. Then you'd have another wave that came in somewhere between the end of the first weekend and the end of the second weekend. Then you'd have another wave that came in kind of after the tournament. Then you'd have the guys that declared for the draft, went through the process knowing they would probably just come back to college, but would transfer anyway. And that would be like the late ads, that they would like Yaxel Lindeborg is a great example of that, where he sort of said, like, I'm going to Michigan if I don't go to the draft. I don't think Michigan got like a full I don't think Michigan got a full sort of confirm that he was coming until like May.
Good leaders on
and so you had just this
guys
you had this, like, you almost sort of picked which wave you wanted to ride into shore. Did you want to go for the guys that entered the portal right at the beginning? And if you filled up all, if you did that, then you can fill up all your spots. But you might miss on some guys that enter later that you didn't expect that might be better for you. But if you waited too long, then you might miss out on some guys at the beginning. You might leave yourself with too much to do. What happens if you get, what happens if the music stops and there's no impact players left and you didn't get everything you needed? Now
it's kind of what happened last year, but they came in late to the process, right?
Yeah. Now it feels like everybody's kind of going to be, everyone's going to be generally moving through the portal. And of course, we both know, conversations are happening behind the scenes. Agents can talk to people and whatever. But like in terms of here's the hard and fast list, here's all the visits that we're going to set up, all that's all going to kind of be happening at the same time now. And that's where I think it's going to feel a little bit more chaotic is on the back end, because in the past, if you were a team that didn't make the tournament, for example, or you went out quickly, well, you could start bringing kids in for visits while other programs were still in the tournament. Now everybody's kind of going to be doing the same thing all at the same time, and it's going to be
I like, and which is what we would love to be able to have for football, but it just doesn't work out calendar-wise the same. But there's still a lot of people that know that they need to do something different, because having the calendar open while teams are still playing is kind of difficult. But I guess, I don't know, for football, maybe that's as close as they can get because of when the calendar falls. Basketball, it works out.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that we sit here and talk like basketball programs can't host portal visitors. I understand it's not the same thing. I would point out, like, Curt Cignetti and Dan Lanning had a big old game of mates on that Zoom before the Peach Bowl, because they were both lamenting how much time they were having to split between game prep and portal visits. I understand football's a different beast. I understand it's one game to prepare for. I understand you have a little bit more turnaround time. I get it. But it is funny to me that basketball sort of treats it sometimes as this very precious thing, when, frankly, football would tell you, well, we have to, we had to do this when it was before Christmas. We had to do this when it was at the New Year. And football, unlike basketball, football's problem is football is beholden to the academic calendar. Basketball is too, but basketball has a natural downtime in April, where these guys, where guys are starting to wrap up classes anyway, and so they can steal away for a couple days and make a couple make 2 or 3 visits. Football, because of the importance of off-season conditioning, particularly in that sport, has to have the lion's share of this done around the turn of the year. Football can't. Now, there are, I would say, this is maybe a philosophical discussion for another day. There are a growing number of voices in college football that would love to do away with spring practice, move the portal window to the end of the spring semester, and build an NFL move the start of the season up, so that we're not ending the season in March or whenever the national title game is in Vegas next year in football. I'm joking, but I think it's like January 25th. It's later than it was last year, which is
a week later.
How late that game was, and it's later than it was last year. Move the start of the season up so the calendar doesn't push so far into January, and build a more NFL-like offseason. And I think that, that's a lot of changes. I could still see it as something maybe in like the 3 to 5 year outlook in college football, of portal window moves back to May. No spring practice, but you have like conditioning in the winter. You have OTAs, mini camps, whatever, however you want to structure it, whatever you want to call it, in the spring. You have the portal window at a time when everyone's out of school. It's not colliding or conflicting with anything. And then when guys get to campus, you have like an NFL-style preseason in the summer. And so many of these places have indoor facilities now that, like, frankly, even the heat and all that stuff probably wouldn't be much of a consideration. Like, that's kind of one of those just sort of, take a thumbtack, pin it to the whiteboard. It's not going to happen next year. Just kind of don't be surprised if you hear maybe a little bit of you hear a little bit of growing momentum around that in the next 12 to 18 months.
Yesterday was the first day of opening spring practice, so you've got so many guys that were not on the roster, and the first thing is, I guess, to start integrating all of that. But what did you see? Basically, I know they're not going to show a lot, especially the first day. There's not a lot to see, but was there anything that you did see that kind of stood out?
Well, I have to be completely honest. I can't think about it because I got to drop my kids off every morning.
I
you're
can't
right.
figure it out either. That's what sucks.
Yeah, we're not gonna see a ton, both in terms of what they allow us to see, and also spring even more so than fall is when you don't even know exactly what they're working on. Like, Curt Cignetti talked about yesterday. I've got 47 guys.
They don't know what they have just yet.
Yeah, but I've only got 33 on offense. A lot of guys are sitting out. Guys and this is normal. Guys who've had maybe a surgical procedure in the offseason to clean something up. Guys, I remember one year where Kevin Wilson basically just said, Dan Feeney's more or less healthy, but I just don't need him to practice. He can just he's going to do some stuff, but I don't need Dan Feeney out there hitting people. I know what Dan Feeney can do. Someone else is going to get those snaps. When Curt Cignetti talks about saying we only have 11 offensive linemen, I think that's what he said, something like that, 10 or 11. Well, that sounds like a lot if you're playing a game tomorrow, but that's not what you're doing in spring. In spring, you're developing. In spring, you're trying to get guys a lot of reps in a relatively confined space of time. You only get 15 practices. Curt Cignetti said many times he basically never uses all 15. In the fall, all your reps go to your starters. So you actually want younger guys to get more reps in the spring, because in the fall, how could you give young guys repetitions in practice in 3-on-3, inside run, 7-on-7, line on line, 11 on 11, whatever, when you got to get your team ready for the game on Saturday. And so when I say you don't know what they're working on, it's not as simple as they're sitting there and they're like, all right, we're going to prepare for Michigan now. No, there's going to be a lot of developmental stuff. There's going to be a lot of stuff that is tailored around, well, this position group needs to find these three things out of its depth chart in spring. And so these are the drills that we're going to do to try and sort of sort the wheat from the chaff and all this kind of stuff. The point is, in spring, you don't often have a great idea of what you're looking at anyway. There are some things that, listen, the Big Ten, I think, tweeted out that Nick Marsh catch that went around yesterday where he reached behind him and caught it with one hand. You're going to see moments like that remind you, okay, there's an all Big Ten type player. There's Charlie Becker's an all Big Ten type player. That kind of stuff's no surprise. But even, frankly, and we'll probably the most instructive thing we will do in the spring is watch the spring game. Even then, there aren't a ton of position battles, right? We got to, Indiana's got to figure out tight end. I think they'd like to find some depth along the offensive line. I think we could probably sit here and pick out the 6 or 7 guys that are going to comprise their defensive line rotation. And then the question will just be sort of where do they put them and what do they do with them? They got to figure out, they've kind of got 4 for 3 spots at safety, maybe 3 for 2 spots at corner. We know who their linebackers are going to be. We know who the quarterback's going to be, especially with Lee Beebe still limited until fall camp. We have a pretty good idea who the running backs are going to be. You're looking for depth and stuff, but we've got a pretty good idea what this team is. And so, yeah, if we have that, then you can bet Curt Cignetti has that. And that's why I say, if you're watching spring practice, you might be watching guys do something, and the purpose behind why Cignetti and his staff are having them do it may not be readily apparent.
No doubt. Zach Osterman of the Indy Star, IU's beat writer. He's got his piece out there right now on yesterday's opening deal. Follow it up. Zach, thank you so much, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me as always, Jim.
Appreciate you, brother. We have got more coming up, and we'll be bringing it to you. But speaking of the moment that Curt Cignetti kind of had a little viral moment yesterday. Nick Marsh, who we've talked about, the very uber-talented wide receiver transfer from Michigan State, came out in his first day of practice under Curt Cignetti wearing some very eye-catching gold shoes. I wonder what Curt Cignetti's take on that was.
What about Nick Marsh really stood out to you when you were recruiting him from Michigan State?
2 years of production at Michigan State. I remember we played Maryland early in the year, and they did too, and saw that tape, and he made some big plays in that game. And I didn't love those gold shoes he came out in today. He learned what getting your ass ripped is all about. I don't know if it happened to him very often. Michigan State. That was before practice started. That was a wake-up call. But no, he's really worked hard.
Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on the Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage, and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave & Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our all-new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch all your team's wins on a 40-foot screen and 30 HD TVs. And level all up with the high-flying human crane that puts you in the game. Private game suites, our exclusive arena, and more. Only at Dave & Buster's on 731 South College Mall Road.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday. Glad to be here, glad to be with you, and looking forward to Bill Bender from the Sporting News joining us here shortly. And again, before I forget, the Athletes in Action has a lot going on around this year's men's Final Four taking place in Indianapolis next weekend and Monday. But on that Saturday, they're having their Keys to Life breakfast at 8 a.m. And it's honoring former Indiana legend Steve Alford. Fans are invited to attend, and you can go to keystolife.us to reserve your seat today, and that will get that taken care of. Former NBA analyst for ESPN, Chris Broussard, will MC the event. Tons of coaches there, and whatever else you've got you'd like to see as well. So, in addition to that, they have another event open to the public on April 1st. No fooling. 2 to 3:30 in Whitestown at the Coca-Cola Consolidated Building, 3690 South 500 East. Lots of coaches there. Steve Alford to be there. You can meet him as well. So head out and take care of that. And in between, with all these NCAA tournament games going on, Dave & Buster's in Bloomington has their March Madness specials. 10 wings for $10 coming up for the championship. $5 domestic margaritas. Thursdays are college nights. Students get $10 power cards with their ID. Tuesdays are for teachers. They also get a $10 power card and 15% off of non-alcoholic food and beverage. Surprisingly great menu. TVs sealing the floor, man. I'm telling you, you want to go watch the games. Nothing comes in bigger than it does at Dave & Buster's, 731 South College Mall Road. And hopefully you're taking your Andy Moore Honda vehicle or your Brent Davis vehicle to get there. Appreciate you joining us. Bill Bender is coming up here in just a little bit in our next segment. I guess we'll wait for him to do that because we'll keep it from that way from breaking up. Next season's Hall of Fame Classic at Newcastle High School is set. The boys side. All right, all four of these teams finished 92-19 last season. Oak Hill will take on Terre Haute North. Oak Hill finished 25-2. Terre Haute North 24-4. Then in the other game, Homestead versus New Albany. New Albany was a team that made it, in essence, to the Final Four of this year's 4A, getting knocked off at the semi-state championship by Mount Vernon and Luke Ertl. So they look to be back and coming back for a state championship next year. So that is going to be some great games to start out the season. Man, so much going on. And then when Bill joins us, can't wait to talk about LSU. They have the triple-headed monster now. Oh, I could not remember her name. Now I do. So now at LSU, you've got Lane Kiffin, which I don't personally mind. I think he's funny as hell. But I don't have to, deal with him much. He's in the SEC, et cetera, et cetera. Will Wade. Then there's Kim Mulkey, the women's coach. She has been the most successful of any of these clowns. But she's also got other stuff going on in her past. I think she fits in at LSU perfectly. She comes out with these goofy costumes that she has designed to, I don't know what. But anyway, you've got her as the women's basketball coach. And now their men's basketball coach, none other than Will Wade, whom LSU fired just 4 years ago because he was caught up in the FBI wiretapping investigation where he was cheating his butt off, making strong-ass offers to people when it wasn't there. So Bill Bender is going to join us. I'm going to bring you in now, Bill, before I hit the break and finish out. But I was just talking about the three-headed monster that LSU has now in Lane Kiffin, Kim Mulkey, and Will Wade. I don't have a problem with Lane Kiffin. I think he's funny. And Kim Mulkey is uber successful. She's just eccentric, maybe. Will Wade's a legitimate, you want to label to him. But how are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I did well. And obviously LSU, the most entertaining coaching collection in all of college sports, I would say. I mean, obviously they're pretty good at baseball too, but between Mulkey, Lane, and Will Wade, they'll have plenty to talk about there down in Baton Rouge.
As they will, and as I will with you when we return. I'm going to take a break so we can just have the entire segment. Bill Bender from the Sporting News. Make sure you're giving him a follow and keeping up on his great content at the Sporting News. It's free, number one, and it's been around for a while. They kind of know what they're doing. Back with more right after this.
Dave & Buster's Bloomington is the place to eat, drink, play, and watch. Enjoy half-price games Sunday through Thursday, plus a new menu and next-level upgrades like private game suites and the high-flying human crane. Only at Dave & Buster's Bloomington on South College Mall Road.
Zach Browning here to tell you about an offer you simply can't pass up. If you're looking for the best coverage of Indiana football and basketball, which includes recruiting, weekly chats, podcasts, as well as access to the best national team out there, then look no further than thehoosier.com. The best part, it's just $1 for the first week. Oh, and did I mention that you get a full year of access to The Athletic when you sign up? You can't beat the coverage and you can't beat the deal. So head over to thehoosier.com today and sign up for just $1. It'll be the best decision you ever made.
You're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area? You need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemore@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington has the deals for you, like great savings on the remaining 2025 Hondas. First-time buyers get more than expected. The Honda Civic and HR-V are the most popular vehicles for first-time buyers in the U.S. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington also has a quality selection of pre-certified used vehicles. And check out the selection of Andy Moore Honda Bloomington's 2026 models, like the Honda Passport, Honda CR-V Hybrid, Honda Ridgeline, and more. ISB Radio with Jim Coyle is brought to you exclusively on The Zone by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Bored, Bloomington? Dave and Buster's can fix that. Eat and drink your way through our new menu. Play half-price games every Sunday through Thursday. Watch your teams on the big screen and level it all up with the high-flying human crane. Private game suites and more, only at 731 South College Ball Road.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday. And we're always fortunate to have our good friend Bill Bender with us from the Sporting News. And Bill, how's your bracket doing, by the way?
Not too bad, because I had Illinois beating Houston. So
wow,
we are on.
That's a great pick because, number one, I just thought Houston was on a mission because of last year. They're good. They're well coached. And I just didn't know if Illinois was going to be able to deal with the relentlessness. They dominated that game.
You know, I thought they would have had to get to 75 points to win, but they were able to make a couple more shots against Houston, against that really tough defense, and they turned it into,
and they played defense on their own.
Right. That was the difference. So, as I say all the time to my my son, bracket bragging is very short-lived. So while my Final Four is intact as of now, I had Illinois and Arizona in the Final Four. I also have Michigan and Duke in the Final Four. Who knows what happens tonight with the Wolverines? Who knows what happens with Duke going up against Rick Pitino and I love that it's Rick Pitino. It's not St. John's. But you know, these.
I said it earlier. I go, tonight we've got Rick Pitino against Duke.
Yeah, they should put that on the little graphic for the logos. But I mean, what an amazing game that should be between those two schools. And then you've got Tom Izzo. I mean, the Big Ten has a unique opportunity tonight. I had to look it up this morning. Never happened. We've had 4 in the Elite Eight, never had 5, and there's a good chance that could happen tonight.
Yeah. Their best team is yet to play. And like Illinois, Michigan State caught a gear toward the end of the year. They never really had a huge lull. Purdue, however, really dropped into the basket. And they're playing well right now. Don't get me wrong. But they've also had the easiest path to get to where they are. So, and as I don't think they have anything for Arizona, which is coming up next, I think. But
this Arizona machine is real, right? It is very real. The way that they
dismantled the team that I thought was going to give them a good game.
Me too. And you know, Purdue's going to have to play the same game that they played against Michigan in the Big Ten tournament championship, where they had very few turnovers, and they're going to have to try to slow down this Arizona machine. Now, that said, I've been down this road with Arizona before. I'm not talking about Purdue. This is more about the Wildcats, where I've seen them in the Sweet 16 or the second round, and you're thinking, you know, how in the absolute world is anybody going to beat this team? And then they find a way to lose. So, you know, and I think Iowa, Illinois will be fun. So, I mean, the first thing we can say is the Big Ten's guaranteed a Final Four team with Illinois and Iowa. Didn't think that would be the matchup that would guarantee one. And then, like you said, you could argue the 2 best teams in the conference are playing tonight.
Yeah, and right now, looking at the Sporting News' article on this, the Big Ten, 16-4. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is, Wisconsin lost in the first round, which, they could have lost their second game, but that record could be even more sterling.
Ohio State could have won.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we can accept
clip.
that loss a little more, but I mean, they could have 18 wins in the tournament. It's remarkable what this conference has been able to do. But again, Arizona was kind of the lead to me last night. Just, it was eye opening. Every time I looked up, it looked like they were dunking the basketball. And be able to put 108 points up in a Sweet 16 game is pretty remarkable. I didn't know how much or what
to hand Calipari his worst tournament loss ever.
Yeah, crazy. And the other takeaway from last night is they're a coach that has increased their stock more than Ben McCollum in the last 2 weeks. The way that Iowa's playing, very deliberate. I don't know how you view that program. I've always looked at them as they're always a tough out at home. When you get in Carver Hawkeye, that's going to be a tough game. But they've been able to string together some really impressive performances on both sides of the ball.
Oh, no question. I mean, they've just always been a okay program. But in his first year, when was the last time they went to the Elite Eight? I heard it, but I forgot. I mean, I know 1999 was a Sweet 16, but it's further back than that to make it to the Elite Eight. I mean, could have been 79. Oh, it was 87. I was it 87? I think
Elite Eight. Well, I think Iowa hasn't been to the Final Four since, is it 1980?
It's 87.
87. Okay.
No, they said 87, but
let me look at
Indiana, Providence, Syracuse, and I can't remember who the fourth team was that year. I heard someone say 87. Maybe it was not the Final Four.
I mean, it had been a while since they had been to the Sweet 16.
That was 99.
Right. Their last Final Four appearance was 1980. Their last Elite Eight was 1987. So, I thought that was 80 because I know Purdue and
I remember that team.
Right. And that was that 1980 team, obviously pretty good. I thought the stat that was really interesting is they said something to the effect of Lute Olson was the last coach to take Arizona and Iowa to the Final Four.
Oh,
that's a neat stat. That was funny. The best stat I saw on social this morning.
That is funny. But look what Ben McCollum has done with what he's done it with. His starting five, I said this the other day, 4 of them, one or two of them started at Division II. At least one started at an NAIA school, if not 2 of those guys. So this is even more, I don't want to say more astounding, but this is Curt Cignetti-esque, but he's not, I don't want to make that the same. It's apples and oranges. It's esque.
In the neighborhood, absolutely. I think one of the things that has impressed me about him, like I said, it's not just, you could have said, well, they brought Bennett Sturts with them. But no, they run good sets. They shoot the ball well. I think the way that they slowed Florida down, by the way, part of that, though, if we're being honest, Florida screwed up the end of the game with their defense and allowing an open 3-pointer. But that's another story. It's been impressive.
Nebraska. They won 2 games like that.
So, which brings me to my next point is the 2 most popular people in America right now, at least for the next 12 hours, with North Carolina being open and potentially Kansas if Bill Self decides to retire. He obviously
he's not retiring.
I hope not. But I'm saying the 2 most popular guys within those job searches potentially would be Ben McCollum and TJ Otzelberger. And I don't know what North Carolina is going to do, Jim. You've been through this with Indiana in some ways. Mike DeCourcy and I were talking about this last week. And he wrote about it. I think they need to break away from the family, so to speak. For those of us
they've come out and basically said they're going to do that.
They need to, and I think it's time. It sneaks up on you that Dean Smith retires, and you go through 4 coaches with Dean Smith ties. It reminds me a little bit of Michigan football when they used to do that with Schembechler. Remember, it had to be a Michigan man to coach Michigan and all that. But it's time for them. I think their best candidate's Mark Byington, the Vanderbilt coach for North Carolina. That's who I would hire if I were them.
Wow. It's going to be amazing to see who gets that job. But what I keep trying to tell, Indiana basketball fans is look at the message boards for Kentucky. Look at the message boards for North Carolina. Look at the message boards for Syracuse. Who's UCLA? I mean, how many big time programs are kind of swimming right now in this age? Now with Indiana, it's different because this has been of their own making. It's been for way too long, and they have kept themselves in this position even up through now because of the mistakes that they had made, and that's on them. So, but now they have a golden opportunity again to turn this around beginning next season when this portal opens up in about a week. They have everything in place. They've got this. They added a new staffer yesterday in Thomas Carr from Louisville. They've got a GM in Ryan Carr from the Pacers. They're going to have probably 8, possibly 9 spots to fill again, Bill, because they've got 6 that are leaving. I think 2 to 3 more of those guys are going to go. And so this is going to be an entire new team again, basically. But they have got to hit it right this time. I don't think that Darren was prepared for the Big Ten, just period, but especially in a year when the Big Ten was above its even normal self. I mean, people have to give a little grace because look what they were competing against. Freaking 5 teams, possibly in the damn Elite 8. That's you were banging heads against a pretty tough deal this year, but so did Ben McCollum.
So did Ben McCollum. So did the Big 12 schools. That's the Big 12's kind of a minefield like that in a lot of ways in most years. You did hit it on a year where Michigan's pretty special. I think Illinois is pretty special. Illinois is very tall. I think you were the one that pointed that out to me last week, that they were the tallest team in the tournament. Makes them tough to beat. Michigan State hasn't gone anywhere. So, yeah, I think that's part of it. But you were talking about the message boards at other places. I mean, take Kentucky, for example. They're not happy right now. They went to the tournament, won a first-round game, and there's already, well, what are we going to do with Mark Pope? There's certain places where it's just like that. And Mike D always, when you get into these message board, who we going to get talks, like, for example, North Carolina, I don't see Todd Golden leaving. I don't see Nate Oates leaving. There's other reasons for that, obviously. But here's one thing, and I give Mike DeCourcy credit for telling me this, was what's going to be curious for me is how often do you think an SEC or Big Ten coach is going to leave for the Big 12 or the ACC? And the second question, why would you do that when you have the money, the advantages? You just said it. The Big Ten's on top of its game. The SEC might not get an Elite 8 school, but it's not for lack of – they had 10 programs in the tournament, and Florida got – upsets happen, and, who knows? I don't think it will happen, but that Alabama-Michigan spread looks high to me. It's not like the Crimson Tide isn't going to go into that game and score a bunch of points. So, I think it's going to be hard. That's why it's going to be a little bit harder for North Carolina and maybe even Kansas if that were to open up. But I'm with you. I think Bill Self will stay.
Oh yeah, without question. But how much longer, that we don't know, because his statement was, it has to be at some place where I'm healthy and it's fun or something, as if it wasn't as much fun at Kansas anymore. Because the pressure is there to win. And now I don't know if this is, again, consistent because they won right after, but as soon as the last national championship came during the era when you weren't supposed to be paying players, and how that has now changed and leveled the playing field, how many, even though they're in their later years, but uber successful coaches are now finding it very difficult to tread these waters.
Well, And so above my head here, you can see the bottom of a Green Bay Packers helmet. So this is my way of saying I've always compared the Kansas Jayhawks to the Green Bay Packers. They're at least since Brett Favre. So they've been good for 30, 40 plus years. They're always playoff caliber teams. But, if you look at Kansas, at least in my lifetime, I believe they've got 3 national titles. Green Bay in my lifetime, 2 Super Bowls, and what do we always say about Kansas and Green Bay? How do they not have more titles? That kind of thing. And I think that's the thing, the pressure you're talking about with Kansas and coaching that job, because we look at them this year, it would be hard not to say that Kansas was a disappointment this season. You have Darren Peterson, who's going to be top 5 NBA pick. You showed you could beat Arizona when you were at home. You go to the tournament, you get in a rock fight with St. John's, and some of that pressure on Bill Self, it's another spot where there are college jobs where you can't win enough. And that's one of them. So, and then health concerns, you just pray and hope that he's doing well. I never speculate on health because I'm not, in Bill Self's living room, or, you want him to be healthy. You wouldn't want him to coach as long as possible, as long as he can do it.
Last night, every game wasn't as good as we thought it was going to be. Well, it's because they weren't as close as we thought they were going to be. A couple of them were awesome. Tonight, we have got another schedule of great games lined up, and it starts with the Michigan Wolverine, it starts with Rick Pitino against Duke, baby.
Rick Pitino against Duke, not St. John's. It's just Rick Pitino. You know what? I think this is true. And he went to the Final Four in 1987 with Providence. And the fact that he could go to a Final Four 39 years later is mind-boggling to me, that somebody's able to do that. Now, when you get in greatest coaches of all time conversations, Wooden, Bob Knight, Coach K, they all come up. But has anybody had the versatility that Rick Pitino has to be able to do it at 4 different places? And he took it was Iona to the tournament. And as my editor likes to point out, he won a couple Greek League basketball titles in Greece, or the Greek Cup, whatever it's called. It's an amazing run of coaching by him. But I don't know if they're going to win tonight.
Greatest in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to beat Duke tonight. I think Duke recalibrated against TCU, and they might have they shoot the ball just a little bit better than St. John's.
Well, I hope they do, because they're not on my bracket to win. But I can't wait to see this. The thing about Pitino that amazes me, if you could block his face out and didn't know who he was and just could watch him on the sideline, he looks like a 23-year-old version of Rick Pitino. He's going up and down the sideline. He's got the same energy. He's consumed with basketball.
That's what he was born to do. And one of your commenters, Andy Stump, says if he stayed at UK, he wins 5+ titles. I agree. Like, if he didn't take the Celtics job and they offered him a ton of money to go there, and at the time, I think it's important to remember what the Celtics job was at that time. They were looking for somebody to resurrect the Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale era. And I totally agree, because, again, in my lifetime, and I'm 46, I don't think there's ever been a more fun team to watch than like those 96, 97, 98. Maybe the UNLV teams, maybe, I don't want to go too hard in on Kentucky here. I know what radio station or pod I'm on here, but you know what I mean? They were a lot of fun to watch. His Louisville teams were a lot of fun to watch. So, and St. John's is different, though. They're kind of a classic old school Big East beat you up team. That's kind of the difference, and shows that how he has evolved as a coach. All that said, like I said, I like Duke tonight, Jim. I think they get a lot of free throws with Boozer. I think they turn it into. I'm more interested actually in the UConn-Michigan State game, because you're going to have the bleep button on with those two coaches on the sideline. You'll definitely have to have bleeps on sideline huddles, and I want to see if UConn actually is going to rebound with them. And I like UConn to win the game, but I think it's going to be tight.
We'll certainly find out. Bill Bender with the Sporting News. Make sure you're giving him a follow, and hopefully we'll get to talk again next week. And Are you going to the Final Four?
I'm not. Mike will be there. I'll be probably in house, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun, and I will definitely check in with you next week. I love this segment with you guys. Your listeners are great, and you're easy to talk to. We could go all day.
Nobody loves it more than I do, man. We all love as a matter of fact, everybody loves you and your versatility across all sports. But I just love the conversation. Bill is just a great guy on top of that. So thank you for being with us, buddy. Have a great day, Bill, and a great weekend. Bill Bender from the Sporting News. Make sure you're giving him a follow. And man, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Unfortunately, it went so fast. But back on Monday to do it all again. We'll wrap up what happened with the weekend. Until then, go out and have yourselves a great time. I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio. Stay tuned for Glass.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.